My dudes, it's Trent, and as you know, if you follow my channel, I am on a quest, a journey, if you will, to improve my landscape painting abilities. And of course, I've collected my journey into a workshop that is the landscape painting workshop. I'm still adding to it. Originally, it was just lessons 1 through 5, and now I've decided I'm going to keep adding to it. So if you've already picked that up, I'm going to be adding lessons 6 through 10 to this. Those are beefy, real-time, long, full hour-long videos. This is just going to be the summary for here on the YouTube channel. So this is everything that I learned from doing some rock studies and how you can shave hours of time off of your landscape paintings. All right, let's dig into it. For this piece, we're looking at this reference image. It's kind of blurry, but I found that it was useful enough for just figuring out a lot of things. First of all, you should always darken your canvas. Don't do these studies over white. It's just the contrast blows out your colors, and everything about color that I learned from doing this study is that it's all relative. Now, I kind of knew that, but it was a strong reminder, okay? So either go like a mid to dark gray, or if your rocks are mostly gray, you probably want to use some color. In this case, we got a lot of bounced light from the forest around these rocks, so I wanted to make sure that I integrate that. So we went with like a dark desaturated green for the background. Next, paint the outline and the blob shape of your rocks on a new layer. Make sure that's on a new layer because you're going to be warping it and skewing it and stretching it, and you're going to be selecting it using the thumbnail. Like if you select the thumbnail while holding down Command on your keyboard, you'll select the whole layer, everything that's on it as a mask almost. Make sure that you're using a nice mid-tone. This is going to be your general shadow color so that you can go lighter for your highlights and you can go darker for your shadows. The next thing you want to do is find your shadow color, which ironically enough is all in the warm range. So that was the interesting thing that I discovered about doing this, is that all of my colors for this rock are in the yellows and red range. They're just very desaturated, so they look cool. And when you look at that reference image, it looks like there's like cool color gray in there. That is actually a dark desaturated yellow. Colors are all relative to each other. So once you find your main shadow color, you just go in with the chisel brush. If you don't know my chisel brush, I love my chisel brush, man. It's in my brush pack. And man, I just go in and just fill in those large shadow areas to start to find the forms. I wanted to assimilate this into my visual library. I want to start to get these large clusters of shapes and like how the light is bouncing off of them. I want to commit that to my brain, to my memory. The biggest thing that I learned from doing this was just how much of a range I could get from just staying in this small range of color. I was able to get so much variety and so many different illusions of more colors in the shadows from just moving the slider around in that yellow and red range, just keeping it very desaturated. And particularly because this rock that I'm doing a study of is a bit of an overcast day. It's not like a bright sunny day. Once I had my shadows in place, it was time to really bolster up those areas that are getting hit by direct light, such as the upper left-facing face of the rocks, and then also hitting up some of those edges that are catching just a little bit more light, maybe on the specular side. If it's like facing the camera right at the point, the corner point, it's going to reflect a little bit more light than if it were a flat surface, for example. That second rock back there to the left is the same kind of stone. It's just getting slightly different material treatment because it's a lighter color of the stone. So the one in the foreground with a little bit more yellow on it is going to get a little bit more attention, whereas that one's going to be a little bit more desaturated, more of the gray, and it's going to pop out a little bit less. So it's actually getting a slightly different treatment entirely. It stays within a different color range is what I'm trying to say. But even though it's only like 10% more saturated, that more yellow stone is capturing a lot more of the light, so it gets a lot more of the attention. And so you can see within a matter of about 15 minutes, I've already got a really great base for rocks here. And looking a lot closer at the reference image, you'll notice it has these planes. And so I wanted to visually define where those faces are that are getting the most light and then apply that to my own painting as well. Turning these forms is so essential, but turning the forms on the same material, I think, is really the key here. In a lot of ways, I'm building a 3D projection of the rock in my mind. And then by calculating that the light is at about, let's say 10, 11 o'clock, then essentially it's going to kind of cast a little bit of a shadow on that bottom right side. That means that all of the details, all the tiny little specular pops and little pieces of rubble that are sitting around at the base and even protruding out of the top surface are going to catch a little bit more light if they're popping up. Now for the star of the show, I go into the mixer brush tool, and that's going to give me that oily, smeary kind of effect that's going to really make my rocks feel organic and natural. Now the mixer brush is the star of the show. When the mixer brush shows up, the music stops and everything seems like it's in slow motion and panties just start flying off, okay? Because this is going to give you that natural canvas texture on your painting. Now I've seen a lot of tricks. I use a lot of tricks, okay? I'm known for my Photoshop cheats, okay? But the mixer brush tool is the one biggest trick that's gonna make your paintings look like you're not even using digital. You couple that combo with my chalky-like brush and you got yourself a formula for just epic, epic fun party time painting. The rendering part, to get it to feel really natural, I'm kind of dancing between a normal brush to lay down some colors and then switching between the mixer brush to smear it around, smudge it around. You find that you get a lot of secondary colors in there. You find that you get a lot of accidents, happy accidents that you can pull from it, especially if you've got your reference right there on the same screen, so that you can really imprint it into your mind, because the whole point of doing these studies is to disrupt your preconceived notions, your preconceived model of what it is that you're drawing or what it is that you're painting. So if I try to paint a rock from just my mind, I mean, it might look, of course, it'll look like a rock. I've painted a lot of rocks in my day, believe me, man. But if you find that you're doing the same pattern, like you're always drawing hands at the same angle or something like that, if you want to disrupt that and expand on your vocabulary, then you've got to do some studies. And this is no different than learning a foreign language. And I talked about this many, many times. If you find that you're not articulating very well, start reading more books. You'll start to incorporate more language into your vernacular. Doing studies from life is the same thing. You're going to expand on your visual vocabulary, your mental image of what a rock should look like. So if we do this in all of the different parts, then when we go back to doing our landscapes, I mean, this is going to be easy because we already have new models for what our rocks can look like. You keep doing this, and eventually, after a year, you put all those pieces together of bark studies and tree studies and rocks and rivers and streams and sand and dirt and all the different types of rocks and different types of plants. And after a year, just after 6 months, you're going to see massive improvements to your landscape painting. So that's part of what the mission I'm on is. And don't be fooled, man. There is so much to learn in just painting rocks. There's so much going on here. There's so much natural weathering going on and the different types of surfaces and how the weather affects those surfaces. Like this rock clearly has ripped off of another larger boulder or a cliff wall. And you could extrapolate on this to build out an entire wall of stone. But these rocks, these boulders are going to look very different than another type of boulder, another type of rock that's maybe lining a river or something like that, a body of water. Okay, now dudes, here's the benefit of having done this on a new layer. You can click on that thumbnail while holding down the command key and it'll select your rocks, everything you've painted. Now on a new layer, you can paint in some more shadows. So you can adjust the lighting of this shot. You can create a new layer on top of that and create a color dodge layer that's gonna add a little bit of like burn, a little bit more saturation to your core shadows, for example. And you could keep adding on to this, keep zooming in and then painting. Once you've got more colors in there, you find that you can color tab and just keep painting it in. And you're seeing the ultra time lapse here as I spent basically just another hour rendering the hell out of the rock to try to just make it feel natural and make it feel organic. And I'm color dabbing and smearing, and it's just a dance between that mixer brush and the chalky-like and the normal brush to just lay down more color and then define shadows and then cluster large surface areas so that it doesn't feel like they're all the same size. And getting that variety of big, medium, and small is going to be essential for creating like a nice isolated rock painting. And here's where all of that pays off. You can drop that into one of your landscape paintings, and as long as your lighting is consistent with the lighting of the scene, you can paint in the shadows and integrate the bounced light from the grass popping up onto those rocks, or you could continue to paint up more boulders from the side of it. You could adjust the color balance of it to make sure that it matches the lighting. So you've got your blue sky is bouncing a little bit more light off of the shadow side of your rocks in the foreground, and that your highlights on your lit side are going to be matching the kind of highlights that you've got on other stones in the rest of your painting. And this can be used to set the tone for the type of rocks that you've got throughout your entire landscape painting. And if you're working in production art, you know that saving time is super important, so you can build this library of trees and rocks and boulders and rivers and streams and grass clusters, and you can use them across many different landscapes to eventually create this library that you just assemble pieces to create beautiful landscapes. Then the only part that you'll have to paint is the lighting, and to make sure that it's all consistent, your perspective is all consistent, and then you'll just have to paint in whatever your point of interest is. If your environment landscape piece is to showcase a tower or something like that, in which case you've just saved yourself 50% of your time. So you're able to generate twice as many paintings in half the time. I told you I was going to hit you with a time saver. Now, a lot of people aren't going to click on this video because it's about painting rocks and not painting boobies or butts, okay? But you're going to have an advantage over them because there's not a lot of jobs for people to paint boobies and butts. Actually, painting boobies and butts is very profitable, but this video is about landscapes. Well, the painting boobies and butts video is coming up soon. That'll be coming in next month. Don't you worry, man. Anyway, so that's it for me this week. I want to thank you guys so much for stopping by. Of course, if you really want the hand-holdy 1 hour long version, along with the rest of my landscape workshop, you can go pick that up. It's still on sale for the October sale. As you know, I'm here every Wednesday. I'm doing a lot more tutorial videos here on my YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe and click that bell. And dudes, I'll see you next Wednesday. All right, ciao, baby. Oh, yeah.